Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a shortcut to being truly well-informed on a topic that, well, it touches every single one of us. How we navigate stress, failure, and belonging in a world that often pushes us into what our source material calls survival mode.
Hmm.
We've pulled insights from a really fascinating book, Win the Inside Game, and it's just packed with surprising facts, real-world stories. Our mission today is to give you clarity on why we often struggle, and maybe more importantly, how we can move from simply surviving to truly thriving.
Yeah, the author does a brilliant job here, taking these, deep psychological concepts and grounding them in experiences we can all actually relate to, from elite sports to just our everyday lives. So today we're going to unpack these powerful ideas, helping you understand not just what might be keeping you stuck, but why it really matters for your well-being, and crucially, how you can actually shift your own internal game.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our goal for this deep dive is really to explore how we can get out of our own way, gain some clarity on who we are, what we truly pursue, and, where we genuinely fit in. So right off the bat, the book dives into this concept of survival mode. It sounds like something we all kind of intuitively understand, but what does the source say are the deeper psychological underpinnings of that feeling, and how can we spot it in our own lives?
Well, what's truly insightful here is how various psychological theories, things like the group-based control model or care management theory, they all point to this fundamental human drive. When our sense of meaning gets disrupted, the book introduces a term, a bit of a mouthful, disanxious incertilibrium.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, just think of it as that really deeply uncomfortable feeling of being disoriented, anxious, and uncertain all at once. It's like our brain's urgent alarm bell, basically signaling us to find stability again and fast, our default response. We tend to grasp for anything to restore control. That might mean doubling down on a group identity, like, committing further to a church or political party for comfort.
Right, seeking security.
Exactly. Or maybe chasing immortality via longevity gurus when we're confronted with our own mortality. The core insight is our brain prioritizes quick closure over real solutions when it feels threatened.
So it's about fixing the feeling, not the problem.
Precisely. And this manifests in our everyday actions. We might reach for our phones when we're bored or lonely instead of actually connecting with people, or find ourselves doing that busy, distracted work at the office, instead of the deep, focused work that really moves the needle. When we feel threatened, we fixate on just eliminating the negative feeling itself, not solving the underlying problem, which is exactly why we self-sabotage sometimes.
That makes so much sense. It's almost like our brain treats minor discomforts like they're major threats. The book uses that really vivid example, the Manti Teo catfishing scandal, to show this survival mode in action. What truly struck me about his story was how Taro, this sort of unassuming star football player, was just publicly ridiculed, accused of being in on the whole hoax. He was torn apart. And the book explains that a profound kind of numbness never really left him for the first 3 years of his NFL career. His brain basically hit escape to survive that overwhelming dread and uncertainty.
Yeah, it perfectly illustrates how our individual psychology reacts to these perceived threats. And zooming out a bit, the source points to how bigger cultural ideals can also powerfully contribute to this survival mode. The American dream, for instance, is identified as a major culprit. James Trussell Adams, who coined the term back in 1931, he actually meant it to be about well-being, moral character, opportunity. He even warned we'd gone astray.
But it morphed, didn't it?
It did. It transformed into this dream of material plenty. The 2 cars, house in the suburbs, lots of stuff. And this materialistic focus, combined with a really heavy achievement culture, it leads to widespread burnout and languishing. There was a 2022 Deloitte survey found 77% of workers experienced burnout. And incredibly, 64% of those who are actually passionate about their work still reported feeling stressed.
Wow, even the passionate ones.
Exactly. And we even see this paradox in richer countries having sadder children, which is largely attributed to higher learning intensity and this intense focus on achievement from a really young age.
It's chilling to think how this protect and avoid mindset, fueled by fear, doesn't just impact us as adults, but subtly reshapes how we raise our kids too. The source highlights this trend called safetyism as a key reason for the decline in unstructured free play. Research shows only, 27% of kids today play outside regularly compared to 80% in previous generations.
Right. And monkey bars, slides, they've been replaced by safer alternatives. But this applies to adults, too. We end up over-engineering everything and feeling like we're, as the book puts it, choking at life itself.
That's a strong phrase.
It is. And ultimately, when we live in survival mode, our predictive brain, it kind of cranks up the volume for perceived threats and mutes anything positive. This leads to distorted expectations and often self-fulfilling prophecies. We get stuck anticipating danger.
Wow, okay, that paints a pretty stark picture. It really sounds like survival mode is deeply ingrained, isn't it? From our basic psychology right up to the cultural stories we absorb. So if that's the trap, how does the book then suggest we actually get unstuck? How do we shift out of this cycle?
Well, the book argues the journey involves reprogramming and rediscovering yourself. It's about moving towards clarity, accepting that life is messy, and actively exploring. Manti Te'o's story, again, offers a powerful illustration. He found his clarity by forgiving himself and shifting his focus towards spreading love to others.
It was an internal shift first.
Very much so. The core idea is to consciously turn down that threat sensitivity, to recognize that, not every criticism or uncomfortable feeling needs to be treated like a life or die situation. It's about diversifying your sources of status and meaning, so that one failure, like maybe a presentation that didn't go perfectly, doesn't completely shatter your sense of worth. It's about creating some crucial space between who you are and what you do.
Okay, so separating identity from performance. That naturally brings us to how we handle setbacks, because they're inevitable, right? The book challenges that simple idea of failing forward, arguing failure, fundamentally changes us. So how does it suggest we learn to lose well?
What's truly fascinating here is something the source calls the winner and loser effect.
Hmm.
Our actual biology changes depending on whether we win or lose. We see shifts in hormones like testosterone and cortisol, and even specific brain areas. There's the dorsal medial prefrontal cortex. Let's just call it the DMPFC for short.
The MPFC, got it.
Yeah, it shows measurable changes. And these biological shifts directly impact our confidence, our drive to persist. Pretty amazing, actually. In fact, mice studies show that activating the DMPFC in mice who had previously lost made them suddenly win 90% of their subsequent matches.
Wow, so you can flip the switch biologically.
To some extent, yeah. And in our modern world, failures are often so public, right? Social media puts everything on display, which can make coping even harder. So learning to lose well becomes essential. It's about shifting from seeing failure as this huge personal threat to seeing it as valuable information, something to learn from. The source suggests creating a temporal buffer after a loss, basically. Don't immediately dive into the cognitive work of figuring out what went wrong.
Let it breathe a bit.
Exactly. Allow yourself to feel the emotions, maybe talk about it, process it, then analyze it later. It's about keeping failure informational, not deeply personal, like how you might approach losing in a video game. You can even actively change your physical state. Play calm music, use humor when recalling a bad memory to kind of dislodge that ingrained threat response.
And if we don't learn to lose well,
the consequence is significant. If we respond to losses with, say, tantrums or just total avoidance, we're actually more likely to shy away from challenges even after we have wins. The goal is to move through these phases, from that initial stressed and protect mode to recover and restore, and then crucially into learn and grow.
this all leads to another really critical aspect the book explores. How to care deeply about something, but also be able to let it go when necessary. It uses the examples of basketball legends Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, both famously intense competitors, right? And they achieved their championships under coach Phil Jackson, the Zen master, who emphasized balance. So the big question becomes, how do you have that incredible drive without letting it just completely consume you?
Right. And the book offers Sarah Hall, the elite runner, as a really compelling contemporary example. It says she didn't lose her competitive fire when she let go. She consciously worked to put her identity as a runner in its rightful place, seeing it as important, yes, but not the entire thing that defined her as a person.
Finding that balance.
Exactly. The insight here is that the right kind of caring comes from the inside out. It's about loving your pursuit, whatever it is, but not marrying it. It's about, quoting here, holding on to your values tightly while keeping space between what you do and who you are. The source suggests most of us probably need to be a little less like Michael Jordan and a little more like Sarah Hall, focusing more on inner reflection and growth, not just external validation.
That makes sense. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the internal game. But beyond our internal state, our environment obviously plays a huge role in either supporting us or thwarting us. The source highlights how crucial it is to intentionally craft your environment so it works with you, not against you.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about the satanic panic of the 1980s, like the McMartin preschool case.
Yeah.
It shows how widespread uncertainty and fear, kind of amplified by the rise of infotainment, just led people to default toward protection. It created a threatening environment perception. Conversely, research shows that simply feeling understood can actually increase your pain tolerance. It can even make hills seem shallower when you're walking, or distances seem shorter.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it underscores this powerful connection between our internal state and how we perceive the external world. As the book says, the presence of a close other provides a sense of assurance that the world is a safe place.
That's fascinating. And we often reach for such superficial connection, don't we? Like watching reality TV stars instead of having real interactions. But cultivating a deep sense of home in our physical environment seems vital. And what the book unpacks next is truly interesting. Gina, the winner of Alone Australia. She's highlighted as someone who exemplified this by connecting so deeply with her environment, finding a real sense of home in the wilderness. When we feel that connection and ownership to a space, maybe it's a lake you kayak on or the trails you walk, we're far more likely to care for it. And it starts to feel more like our space, a supportive space.
Exactly, and this can be as simple as decorating your office with personal touches, family photos, inspirational quotes. These seemingly small things send a subconscious message. You belong here. They invite a more authentic role, a sense of ease.
And the flip side, when our space feels threatening,
Then we tend to become defensive, which raises that important question.
right?
How does this relate to something like territoriality? We see it in action with things like road rage, right? People viewing the area around their car as their personal territory that's been invaded. This often happens when our identity gets too closely tied to an outcome and we feel under threat. There's this subtle shift from feeling comfortable and at one with our surroundings to a state of mindless greed and protection.
Like drawing a line in the sand.
Pretty much. And the insight here is profound. Objects in our environment can actively prime different roles within us. Holding a gun, for instance, studies show it makes people more likely to misidentify harmless objects as weapons, and it even increases road rage incidents. So the idea is we can strategically rig our environment wisely to invite roles that support learning and growth rather than defensiveness or being overly protective.
Okay, so shaping our physical space matters. Moving beyond that, the book talks about finding connection and belonging with others, but without fusing our identity completely with the group. The example given is the Southern Baptist Convention's dramatic shift on abortion views. They went from holding a kind of middle ground position in 1974 to, by recent times, nearly 70% opposing abortion rights, with few or no exceptions. It powerfully demonstrates how deep group identification can lead our values and behaviors to shift pretty drastically to match the group's stance, even if it's far from where we started individually.
Right. And the consequence of being too entangled with a group or an idea is that we can lose perspective. We default to playing not to lose, becoming resistant to calculated risks or dissenting opinions. The source warns about the dark side of belonging, where a desperation to fit in can lead us to grasp onto superficial aspects of the group. And our biology can even follow suit, like those teammates on the sidelines experiencing testosterone surges just from watching their team win, but only if that team is really essential to their own identity.
So it becomes part of them.
Exactly. On a wider scale, this really illustrates the crucial balance we need between our individual self and our social self, between distinctiveness and cohesion. The solution isn't to become a total collectivist and lose yourself, but to learn how to integrate with groups, not fuse with them. One powerful strategy the book suggests is graduated self-disclosure.
Think of Arthur Aaron's experiment, where strangers asked each other increasingly personal questions. It helps us expand our sense of self and see others as complex individuals, not just group members.
Building deeper, more authentic connection.
Precisely. And sharing novel or challenging experiences together also pushes us out of that superficial mode. Ultimately, the insight is that true security from groups or relationships, like having a spotter when you're lifting weights, actually frees us up to perform better and explore more, rather than anxiously clinging or attaching. It provides those fundamental psychological needs, connection, competence, purpose, that give us the clarity to really pursue excellence. Okay, so putting this all together, what does it mean for actually getting unstuck and realigning with reality? It sounds like sometimes our brains can get stuck in what you called a predictive rut, where our expectations kind of create our reality.
Exactly, which raises that interesting question. How does something like mass psychogenic illness even happen? The source recounts the McMartin preschool poison gas scare, again later identified as mass hysteria. It was a perception-action disconnect. People expected danger, and their bodies reacted. You see similar things historically, like the dancing plagues during times of great strife, or more recently, modern Tourette-like symptoms that seem to coincide with the stress of the COVID pandemic. Even Simone Biles' famous twisties are described in this way as a kind of perception-action disconnect, where the sensory information her body was getting just didn't align with her brain's expectations of movement.
So the brain's prediction overrides reality.
In a way, yes. And the crucial insight here is that these aren't signs of weakness. They're simply the brain doing its job predicting and reacting based on those predictions. If we strongly expect disaster, we can inadvertently create the experience of disaster. The collusion often involves giving a clear alternative reason for the gap between expectation and reality, decreasing the surrounding commotion, and simply getting back to a normal routine like the health official did at McMartin, just getting kids back into classes.
So breaking the pattern. The book suggests we might need perspective changers, or even to do crazy stuff to disrupt these ruts. This is where it gets really practical and interesting for me, like the story of Coach Gerald Stewart's Sea God workout for his cross-country runners, pushing them way past their perceived limits to explore the bottom of the well, completely changing their perspective on pain and fatigue.
Right. Or Tom Tellis' bizarre instruction to an athlete to run wrong by slamming his heel down.
Yeah.
Paradoxically, that fixed a long-standing running issue because it disrupted the deeply worn groove of expertise, forcing the brain to find a new pattern.
So shaking things up deliberately.
Exactly. Other examples include athletes training in darkness, or with strobe lights, or golfers putting underwater. All these things force the brain to reconfigure how it perceives and acts. Even nature plays a role here. David Strayer's research on the 3-day effect, spending a few days in nature without constant stimulation, has been shown to improve creative problem-solving by up to 50%.
Just getting away from the usual inputs.
Precisely. This all ties into a broader theme. The goal is to shift our brain's predictive weighting, to remind our bodies to truly feel and experience again, expanding our potential paths forward. There's a moving example of Gavin Mogan, who has Parkinson's. He describes his brain literally freezing him into a physiological fear state. But he found he can temporarily unfreeze by doing crazy stuff like jumping on a bed.
Jumping on a bed.
Yeah, because, as he explains it, in that moment, his brain feels safe and allows him to move freely again. It's a temporary disruption of the fear prediction.
That's incredible.
His experience teaches us such a powerful lesson. Our brain's predictions are incredibly strong, yes, but we can convince it we're okay, even if just temporarily. We do it by consciously changing our environment, our intentions, or our actions. We need to turn down that internal alarm first, then work to dislodge and realign our perceptions with reality.
You know, ultimately, the book reveals this really profound truth about human nature, I think. It challenges so many assumptions about how people react to crisis and disruption. Contrary to popular belief, and certainly often dramatic media portrayals think Hurricane Katrina, the San Francisco fire, Hurricane Harvey disasters don't automatically lead to chaos and selfishness. William James, the founder of American psychology, observed way back after the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, he noted the rapidity of the improvisation of order out of chaos and a kind of universal equanimity.
Yeah, and similarly, during the London Blitz in World War II, mental health hospitalizations actually didn't increase. Instead, morale, resolve, and community spirit often grew stronger. People became more resilient. This seems to be because, as one researcher put it, disasters force people to concentrate their full attention on immediate moment-to-moment day-to-day needs. It strips away the non-essential and focuses people on connection and immediate action.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, that humans are incredibly adaptable and often find this unexpected resilience when we're truly pushed.
Absolutely. So the journey from just surviving to actually thriving isn't about somehow avoiding all setbacks or difficulties. That's impossible. It's fundamentally about shifting our internal narrative and our external responses. It's about finding that clarity and building a deep sense of security within ourselves and within our connections to others and our environment.
Yeah. This deep dive has really shown us that whether you're navigating a huge personal crisis, like the author's own whistleblowing experience where he ultimately found peace by realigning with his core values or pushing your limits in sport, the secret seems consistent. The secret of world-class performers and just everyday resilience often lies in prioritizing joy, genuine connection, mastery, and the process itself, not just obsessing over the outcome.
Well said. And ultimately, clutch is a state, not a trait. That's a key takeaway. It's something we can all learn to access more often. We do it by filling our fundamental needs with quality connections, by intentionally crafting supportive environments around us, and by continually working to tune our brain's predictions so they align better with reality.
So, what does this all mean for you, our listener, as you go about your week? Maybe consider one area in your life right now where you feel a bit stuck or where you feel like you're just surviving, just getting by, instead of really thriving. What small, crazy thing, maybe not literally crazy, but something outside your normal routine could you do this week? Something to deliberately shift your perspective, even just a little, and remind your brain that you are actually safe enough to explore, to learn, and to truly thrive.